Om Shanti. Today is your 144th day of your godly blessing, and Baba in today's blessing wants us to be in intoxication of the real realization of who we actually are. He wants us to be introverted. People say that when you get into spirituality, you become lonely, but spirituality brings you closer to God, and who else do you want to be close to in this Kali Yuga? To people who can never give you any kind of peace and happiness, maybe momentary, but not for a very long time. Or you want to be in connection with God who doesn't need anything, who is always incorporeal, doesn't want any name or fame, doesn't have any property, doesn't have a Facebook account or a WhatsApp account, doesn't have any worldly things related to it. So he's the Almighty. Think about it. Why is he the Almighty even though he doesn't have any worldly things? And when we have all the worldly things, we are in the ego of it and we still feel so empty about it. So let's see what Baba has to say in today's blessing, what he reminds us about. Baba says, may you be introverted. That means to think from within. Talk to yourself. That is introversion. Introverted doesn't mean that you stop talking to people. This introversion is spiritual introversion. And experience being a lokic. Lokic means worldly, thinking about worldly things, thinking about your property and money and relations and your post positions and your accomplishments in this life, and being attached to them and being connected to them and portraying yourself on the basis of those achievements. That's ego in God's sense, impure ego. But what is your true essence, who you actually are? So Baba says that is alokik. That means you don't belong to this world. You are temporary in this world as an actor, but you actually belong to the supreme abode. So are you alokik? So stabilize in your elevated form, in that elevated form, the original form, before coming into this physical world, into a body. Remember that you can learn when you come to Brahmakumaris. You learn about your first nature, where you were, how you were when you were not on this earth. That is what we learn at Brahmakumaris too. So stabilize in your elevated form and elevated intoxication. Intoxication means people have the intoxication of drinks or drugs or any medicines or anything, but God is talking about the spiritual intoxication. So Baba says in explanation, in the constellation of stars, when you look above, the sparkle of special stars is seen as lovely and unique from a distance. There are only few stars which are sparkling bright, right? Because they have that power within them to absorb the energy of the sun or the suns. So God says in the same way, if you can absorb my energy, because God is the Son of Knowledge, S-U-N. So God says if you can absorb my energy, then you'll start sparkling. But for that you have to be introverted. If you get too involved into the worldly things, worldly talks, worldly things which you do throughout the day, or the different forms of businesses which you get into in the complete day, then your mind is going to be polluted a bit. But to be detached from all those things and be connected to God is the method to actually be completely alokik and be lighter in your mind. So then Baba says, in the same way, you stars should appear to be special souls in a gathering of ordinary souls, whom God is calling ordinary, those souls who are after the worldly benefits and the worldly attainments. God says they are very ordinary souls because they can never love me. So then Baba says, while being in your ordinary form, you are looking very common, very ordinary. People don't look at you, people don't connect to you so much because they feel that you don't have any wealth to part with, you don't have any name and fame to get benefit with. That's what worldly people think. But God says don't worry about all those things, because it's mentioned in the Bible also, once I read, that in the end of the days the meek and the weak shall rule the world. What is the meek and the weak? Meek people might be those who don't stand up and fight. God says you're not here to fight with people. You're there to fight with the demons within yourself. And don't call people the demon. So people think you are meek, that you don't voice yourself. You don't fight for the right, for the honor. So God says the meek and the weak. Weak could be physically weak, weak could be financially weak. So God says in the end only those souls will have love for me, because they are meek and weak. They don't have the ego of things around them, or the wealth or the property, or even have the ego of having intellect, or thinking that I am from so and so society or an organization, or I have the wealth and the property and everything else. Those souls will not have so much of love for me, or they won't recognize me at all. But the meek and the weak will rule, because they'll recognize me and I'll give them the kingdom of heaven on earth. So Then God says, while being in your ordinary form, let your stage be extraordinary and alaukic. Alaukic means not of this world, spiritual. And you will then be seen to be like people who belong to God in the gathering. So you won't want to be belonging to people who are gossiping, talking about other things, flaunting their wealth or their physical beauty. People who are away from these things, you will be those souls who look godly. So Baba says that you belong to God. That's what other people will see in the gathering. But for this, practice being introverted. That means be in connection with God. Be within yourself. Being extroverted doesn't mean that you talk too much. But extroversion means that when you come into extroversion, you talk godly stuff. You talk godly words. You think before you speak. Introverted doesn't mean that you stop talking to people. Introverted means that you go within, think spiritual, and then talk sense when you talk, because that's also a karma which you do. Talking is also a form of karma. So then Baba says, always stabilize in your elevated form. That means, who am I without this property, without this body? Who is God? God doesn't have all these things. God doesn't have the wealth around. Who is He? Why is He revered so much? So who am I? If I am His child, then I have to think of myself beyond this physical world, beyond the physical attainments. That's when I can connect to myself, and that's when I can recognize and realize who God is without the physical things around me. So God says, always stabilize in your elevated form and intoxication. Be powerful as well as knowledgeful. God has given us the knowledge, but He wants us to be powerful at the same time. We can be powerful only when we believe in something 100%. Then only we can talk with complete power. You can have the knowledge, but if you haven't experienced that knowledge, then you will be very meek in talking about it. God wants us to be very powerful and at the same time knowledgeful, and then give knowledge to others. You will then be able to make many souls have this experience of what? Being spiritual and being connected to God. So I leave you with this beautiful blessing. It's a very deep thing which God has told us today. Think about it, contemplate about it. Have a blessed day, stay safe, stay home till the time lockdown doesn't open up at your places. Om Shanti.